Hi, my name is John, and I'm a total failure. Quite possibly the worst aquascaper on planet Earth. Remember a few weeks ago when I scaped this little 5-gallon cube from Aquatop and I was kind of sitting on top of the world? People were giving me compliments. I was very happy with this tank and I thought, wow, I'm an aquascaper now. This is so cool. Well, that confidence and that happiness over being an aquascaper all died when I did this tank right here. And in this video, I want to explain what happened with this tank, the disaster that it is, what it was supposed to be, and unfortunately, what it turned out to be. Now, I think this is important. I think that when we look around YouTube, my channel included, all of these channels, when you see projects that get done, usually you're seeing the best of what that particular person has to offer. If they do something that looks terrible, and I've done this myself, they don't upload those because why would I do that? It's embarrassing. I'm not going to show my failures. I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I'm just saying that we've all done that. We've had things go wrong and we've just said, you know what? No, I'm just not going to do that. That's what I wanted to do with this. I spent so much time on this tank and I was so proud of it until the unthinkable happened. And I just thought I'm going to scrap the whole thing because it's embarrassing. It's humiliating. I don't want to have anything to do with this. But then I realized, no, that's not right, because people could actually learn from my failures. So I'm going to show you the entire process of me scaping this tank and show you how proud I was of the whole thing, but then explain what happened in the end. But before we get into that, I want to explain what this tank was supposed to be, explain the concept of what I was shooting for with this. If it had all worked out, I think it would have been great, but here we are. So I got to confess that I am a grown man, I am a grandfather, and I'm also a Potterhead. Yes, make fun of me all you want. I said Potterhead, not pothead. I am obsessed with Harry Potter. I love anything and everything that has to do with Harry Potter. Nothing would make me happier in life than to set up an aquarium for Daniel Radcliffe or J.K. Rowling. I would just love to do that. I'm absolutely obsessed with it. So I wanted to do a Harry Potter themed tank. And again, if this had worked out, it would have done exactly what I wanted it to do. I wanted to create a Harry Potter tank that's not obnoxious, it's not silly, but somebody who is a Potterhead like myself, or possibly just somebody that had seen the movies, would be able to look in it and say, oh, I see what you did there. That's a beautiful tank, but I also see little elements of Harry Potter. That was the goal with this, and I'm going to say it for the third time. If it had worked out, it would have been just that. It would have looked great, but it didn't work out, and you can see that behind me, the carnage that is this tank. So anyway, enough messing around with it. Let's get into the entire process, and then at the end of this video, I'm going to explain what I plan to do with this tank. Little variation of what I already have. I don't know. It's not going to be what I wanted it to be, but it'll be kind of close to that. And I'm going to put some really cool fish in it. I don't think I'm going to have time to do that part of the project in this video, but I want to go over just what happened here and explain that things don't always go right. Sometimes projects fail, and I'm not afraid to show that, even though I should be, because this is really embarrassing.
You're a wizard, Harry.
So I wanted to have 4 items in this tank that are Harry Potter related. Well, actually 5 if you include the background. I bought a poster of Hogwarts online that I cut down to use as the background. I think the website I bought it on was Zazzle.com, something like that. But anyway, I wanted a Whomping Willow, a golden snitch, a mandrake, and one of my favorite things about the Harry Potter series, the sorting hat.
Gryffindor!
I originally wanted to buy these items that I could then put into the tank. So of course they would have needed to be aquarium safe, but I couldn't find them anywhere. I drove within 2 hours of my house in every direction, trying to find either a hobby shop or collectible shop or whatever that would sell Harry Potter type stuff. And there just wasn't anything that I could use. There was plenty of Harry Potter collectibles, but none that I could actually put into the tank. So I decided to take a different direction. I just decided to make them myself. I'm pretty good with my hands, so I figured I would give it a shot. So I bought clay, I bought a bunch of stuff to make armatures, and I got to work. I figured of the 4 things that I wanted to make for this tank, the golden snitch was going to be the easiest, so I started out with that. I started with a small ball of tinfoil, which I then put inside of this Sculpey material. This is the only piece of this whole puzzle that I used the Sculpey instead of regular clay. I actually prefer regular clay, but what do I know? I'm not a sculptor, but I made a nice little ball about the size of a golf ball, and then I used these little tools to kind of make the little accents on it and all of that kind of stuff. I'm pretty happy with the way the golden snitch turned out, but what I'm really happy about with this was the wings that I made for it. I took a normal plastic comb, I bought it as a pack of like 5, and I used my Dremel tool to sculpt the wing shape out of these combs. This worked out really, really well, and the finished product was good, but I did make one mistake that I want to warn you about. When I had it all sculpted with my Dremel tool, I wanted to make a curve in it, so I used my heat gun to heat up the plastic so that it'd be softer so that I could mold it to the shape I wanted, and with one of them, I got a little bit too close. This wasn't that big of a deal because I had a bunch of these combs, so I just remade another one and moved on with it. But that was a really cool part of this, and I think it made it really stand out to have these wings come out of it. That's kind of the signature of the snitch, but we know how things turned out. I also, when it came time to paint it, I wanted to use my airbrush. But it turns out last time I used my airbrush, I didn't do a good job cleaning it out. It wasn't really ready, so I just painted it with a brush. The paint job didn't turn out the best, but it was okay. I used a golden metallic acrylic paint, and it was fine. I knew it was going to be one of those things that once it was in the tank, it would look better. And once it got a little algae and stuff like that on it, I thought it would have looked great. So overall, I was happy with the snitch. For the Whomping Willow, you're going to need to use your imagination because this thing never really looked good, but it would have if this whole thing had worked out. I used some thick wire to build an armature and then used clay that I rolled into strips. I took that wire and shoved it down into the clay, and then once it was round, I put them all together and twisted it into the shape of the tree. Now, once this thing was fully shaped, just like all of the other pieces, I did bake it in the oven for about 2 hours to dry it out completely. We're going to talk about that a lot more as we go on in this video, but once it was cured, I painted it again with acrylic paints. I used black and gray to make it kind of look old and weathered, used a sponge and a brush, and that was really all it took. It turned out exactly how I had envisioned it. But again, you've got to think about what it would have looked like in the end. When I attached the plants to the big branches, it gave it that final look of having those sticks sticking straight up in the air like the tree did in the movies. I don't know how else to describe it, but that was kind of the goal with that. It turned out fine. It would have been so much better if what happened at the end didn't happen. But the vision that I had with it was to be something similar to the Whomping Willow, where people might see it and say, yeah, that kind of looks like the Whomping Willow, but it never really worked out that way. Now for the Mandrake, I want to show here real quick a little trick that I learned from my vaping days. I'm making an armature for the Mandrake, which is like the skeleton for it. And if you ever have a lot of really thin wires, I'm using the fluoro wire, I think it's called, that you use for like making floral arrangements. If you put a bunch of them together, stick them into the end of your drill and then hold the other end with needle nose and turn it on, it makes it into one big piece of wire, which is pretty cool. And before we go farther, I also want to address something that I'm sure you're going to ask. John, you're putting metal into aquariums. And here's the thing. Yes, it is putting metal into aquariums. And yes, putting metal into aquariums is a bad thing. However, all of these metal pieces are being covered by the clay. They're being sealed up by the clay. And then the clay itself is being sealed by the paints and all of that. So the metal is not going to be an issue. It's not going to be exposed to the water. It's not going to rust and create all of those problems or anything like that. I just wanted to get that out there because this was something that before I started this project, I didn't know if I was going to be able to do until I did some research and I really thought about it. And I said, yeah, it makes sense. Everything is going to be covered, so it shouldn't be an issue. Now, for building the Mandrake, obviously, I buried the armature in the clay and then formed it. And I got to be honest with you, I haven't sculpted anything since 7th grade art class. So I didn't know what I was doing here, and it shows. This Mandrake took me 3 tries to get something that I thought was passable. The first 2 were a total nightmare. The third one wasn't that great either, but I said, you know what? It'll pass as a Mandrake. And that's really all that mattered to me. Again, a potterhead looks into the tank and sees the little flower pot with the little monster looking guy coming out of it with all the leaves on his head and roots for hands. It was going to be something that a Harry Potter fan would see and say, oh, that's the cute little thing that screams and kills people with its screams. It would have made sense to those people. To others, they would have seen it and said, I don't know what that is. It's just a weird looking monster. I don't know why it's in an aquarium. But a Harry Potter fan would have appreciated it. And I think that the end result that I was able to come up with on this would have pulled that off. I think somebody that knows Harry Potter would know that's a Mandrake and it would all make sense. But I'm not thrilled with the way he turned out. I'm not a sculptor. I don't know what else to say. I did my best. I was proud, but I wish I had 3 or 4 more tries to see if I could have done a little bit better. But anyway, once he was sculpted out of clay, same thing as the others. I baked him in the oven for a couple of hours. Got a little crack on his arm. Nothing I was too concerned with. I actually put some more clay in there and then baked it again, and everything was fine. Painted him up with the acrylic paints, just like all of the other things. And then once we got to the actual scaping of the tank, that's when I attached Anubius to his head, and he really did start looking like a Mandrake. And the roots for the Anubius weren't quite long enough to extend out to act as his hands, but again, it was enough to kind of get the point across. And my whole thing with this Mandrake was he was going to be kind of buried in the tank. You'll see in the final results, the pot would be sticking out a little bit, and then you would see him in the pot, but then there'd be stuff growing up all around him. So he'd be kind of hiding. So he didn't have to be perfect, but I don't know. I got him close enough. Now to my favorite part of this entire project, the thing I spent more time on than anything else, and the thing that I think turned out best of anything else in the whole project, and that's the sorting hat. When I made the decision to do a Harry Potter themed aquarium, the sorting hat was the first thing I knew had to be in it. I don't know why, I just love the sorting hat. I love that part of the story, and it's the really cool part of the movies. I don't know. I can't explain it. I love the sorting hat, and I had so much fun making him. He's made from clay, as you see, but also I did have an armature in there of tinfoil that I made into the shape of like an ice cream cone. Then I wrapped that in the clay and then made the clay the shape of a cone, and then just went to town with my fingers, with the little sculpting tools. I spent 2 hours sculpting this little guy. The footage that you're seeing is at 20 times the speed. In total, all of the footage that I had making him was 2 hours, but it was 2 hours of total bliss. I just absolutely loved it. And I think that not only was this my favorite part of the project, but I think he turned out to be the best part of the project. My daughter's 22 years old and she is a huge Potterhead. When I showed her the sorting hat, she lost it. I mean, she was like, that is the cutest thing I've ever seen. Can you make me one that I can put in my house on my nightstand or something? I might end up making her one down the road. But when I told her about what happened to this aquarium, the very first thing she asked me was the sorting hat okay? You'll have to stay tuned to the end of the video to find out. Now, I know what you were wondering. Did he wrap that coaster in clay? No, I just made a little pancake of clay and I attached him to it. This actually turned out to be a huge fail. You'll see again at the end of the video. I don't know, maybe somebody that's a sculptor, you can tell me if there would have been a better way of doing that. Again, if I had just had this on my desk or on my bookshelf after he was done and after he was painted, it would have been fine. It would have lasted forever. But it didn't work out like that in the aquarium, unfortunately. As for painting the sorting hat, again, same process as before. I actually started him out all black. I painted him entirely black, which didn't turn out to be necessary because apparently I don't know how to put on coats to make paint show through that's underneath and all of this. So I had to actually go back in there and add like little shadows and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. I really went all out with this guy. I spent a lot of time on him and I'm super, super proud of the results. Is he the perfect sorting hat? No, but I made him. And that's what was important to me. And I don't know. I don't know what else to say. I was thrilled with this little guy. He was a whole lot of fun to make. And to me, he is the most heartbreaking part of the entire story. Now for this entire project to come together, I want to apologize first for the focus on my camera. I'm going to try to edit as much of it out as possible, but I did this project by myself, and because I was in there by myself, I really wasn't able to monitor my camera to see what was going on. And my camera just decided to have a mind of its own that day and couldn't decide what it wanted to focus on. So I know some of it is a little difficult to watch, but I'm going to try to do my best to edit all of that out of there. So with this being a planted aquarium, I went with the fluval stratum substrate. We used this on our nano tanks earlier. It worked out really, really well. So, and we had a bunch extra. So I went ahead and used that on this. I'm a big fan of the substrate because it's treated me well. So I would suggest it to you. I also incorporated that big piece of dragonstone, which again, I don't know. I kind of feel like it adds to the Harry Potter thing. Dragon, I don't know. I thought it looked cool. Lisa didn't like it, but I liked the dragonstone. I thought that added something to it. And then I also, again, giving it that kind of dark and I don't know if you want to say medieval look, because Harry Potter certainly wasn't in medieval times, but the eucalyptus root, the small pieces of that, I really like what that brought to it too. Just that wild kind of crazy, different pieces of wood going all over the place. I thought it added something to it, and you'll see later on that it provided a nice little perch for the golden snitch, which I thought was really cool. So this is the part of the project that I would normally start talking about what plants I used. I would put up on the screen information about each individual plant so that you can learn with me about these plants. But I'm not going to do that in this video because this turned out to be such a fail. Instead, I will talk about the plants in the next video that I do with this tank where I make this problem right. You can learn about all these plants in there. For the rest of this video, I want to talk about what happened. So I put all of these pieces in here. All four of them went in great. I loved the placement of each piece that I put in there. The Whomping Willow right up in the front. That was my vision from the very beginning, was to have that there. Plus, if you ever see pictures of the Whomping Willow, it's out in the yard of Hogwarts, so it looks kind of cool with Hogwarts being in the background like that. It's a perfect placement for the Whomping Willow. The Mandrake right in the middle, surrounded by a bunch of plants. The Snitch up at the top of the wood, which was a surprise. I wasn't expecting that to happen, but it was the perfect place to put the Snitch. And then the Sorting Hat kind of sitting down there in the middle. He was going to be kind of hidden by plants and stuff like that once they all grew in. It was all going to look great. But then the problem happened. So here's how it went. Once the whole tank was scaped, I did what you do, and you fill it up with water. So I filled this tank up with water, and what I noticed right off the bat, I didn't get any video footage of this or anything like that, but what I noticed immediately was a little trickle of what looked like white powder coming out of one of the branches of the Whomping Willow. And I thought, maybe there was a little crack or something and I didn't get enough paint in there, or maybe it cracked after I painted it. I don't know, but it was concerning me a little bit. But it was like a little bit of snow that came down on the substrate and then it stopped. And I thought, okay, well, maybe that was just some residue that was on it or something. I don't know. And I filled it up completely and then I walked away. I mean, there's nothing more that I can do at that point. And I came back about 15 minutes later with Lisa to show her the finished product. And there was a little bit more of that dust down on the bottom. Again, I'm not going to hit the panic button. I'm just like, yeah, I don't really know what that is, but you know, we'll have to see what happens there. Lisa and I, as we were looking at the tank, we were both coming up with ideas of what I can do to kind of refine it. You know, I basically at the end of this project, I was just putting plants in just kind of anywhere. I just put them in wherever. And so when her and I were looking at it, we were like, you know, maybe we ought to move these plants over there and then put a little bit more of these in the back. And we just started coming up with ideas of what to do. And then we walked away from it. We went and had dinner, and it was about 2 hours later that I came back, and that's when it happened. The branch of the Whomping Willow that had that little bit of snow coming out of it, dust coming out of it, had completely broken off. And I thought, oh no, you know, this is devastating. Like this is going to ruin the whole thing. And I also looked at the Snitch up in the piece of eucalyptus root, and I said, does the Snitch look a little bigger than it was when I first put it in there? And then I looked at the Mandrake, and the Mandrake too looked a little weird. Like everything in there, except for the Sorting Hat, everything else, the Snitch, the Mandrake, the tree, everything seemed to be getting bigger. And I said, wait a minute, is this the effects of, you know, things looking bigger in an aquarium than they actually are? You know, I couldn't figure it out. But as I continued to look at these things further, I saw what was happening. And it was that the clay that I had made all of these pieces out of basically started absorbing the water like a sponge. I don't know, and I'd love to hear your theories in the comments. I am not afraid of criticism, and I am not afraid of you telling me I'm an idiot. I don't know if I hadn't cured it properly or if I hadn't sealed it properly. I mean, I used to finish furniture for a living. I know how to seal things. So I thought I had them all sealed off properly, but maybe I didn't. I can't imagine the answer is I used the wrong materials, because I know people that use these exact same materials. It has to be something in the process that I used to build them and paint them that just was a complete failure. And all of these pieces were absorbing water like a sponge. And I reached in and grabbed, I don't have footage of this, but I grabbed the Sorting Hat because it was the most important one to me that I wanted to save. And his head came out no problem, but the bill of his hat just disintegrated as soon as I picked it up. And this was about 3 hours after I had filled the water up. And I started to notice the snitch started to sag a little bit, and the Whomping Willow's branches started to droop down a little bit. And within 12 hours, all of it was gone. The Whomping Willow was reduced to a pile of rubble and dust. The snitch had just disintegrated completely, and it's like a snow covering the ground. It looks horrible. The wings are laying over there. The paint is laying over there. It's just unexplainable what happened with that. The Mandrake stayed in one piece. Now, I'm hoping at this point I will be showing you footage of me reaching in there and grabbing him so that you can see what happens. It just disintegrates in your hands as soon as you go in there to pick it up. And it was one of the most heartbreaking moments for me, because I don't know what you think of this tank. I don't know if you think it looks really cool, but to me, it was a passion project. It was something that I thoroughly enjoyed the whole process. I had so much fun with it, and it broke my heart to see it completely fall apart like this. So there you go. There is the story. There is the carnage that is my Harry Potter tank. Here is the only thing that survived the disaster that was that tank. He lost his bill, but he's still in one piece. I think I might make a new bill for him, or just throw him away and make him a new one. I don't know. That was my favorite part of the whole project. But anyway, this was very therapeutic for me to be able to show you that not everything goes the way we want it to go. Sometimes YouTubers, we make mistakes. All of us make mistakes, and we don't always show those mistakes. So it was important for me to do that, to show you that I had a lot of fun doing a project. I enjoyed it. I probably put 30 hours into this thing. I was having so much fun with it, and then everything came crashing down. I felt like it'd be unfair to just scrap all of that and move on. I'd rather be fully transparent, show you what happened, and maybe you can learn from my mistakes. And if you decide to do something like this, you can do it without failing at it like I did. But you know what? It's not a complete and total fail. I'm going to leave one Harry Potter element in this tank when I rescape it, and that's just going to be the background. I paid $25 for that Harry Potter poster. I'm not going to just throw it away. I'm going to leave Hogwarts in the background of this and rescape it for my pea puffers. I love those fish so much. I've got a bunch of them in a small tank right now. It's a 10-gallon. And it's one of Lisa's tanks, and she's like, get these fish out of here. I want my tank back. They're all getting along very well right now together in that tank. I hope it stays that way here. But if it doesn't, I've got places I can spread these pea puffers around if they all need to be individual. But hopefully they all get along really well in here, and I'll keep them all in here, and that's all that I'll have in here, and that would be really cool. I would do that in this video, but video's already long enough. I don't want this to be an hour-long video. So in the future, I will rescape this tank. You're going to want to see that because it's going to be really cool. It might not be the Harry Potter theme that I wanted, but at least it'll be a cool pea puffer tank. So you're going to want to stay tuned for that. It's going to be a lot of fun. And maybe when I do redo this thing, it won't be a complete and total fail. We'll have to see. It's always going to be a fail, but maybe not as much of a fail. That's what I'm hoping anyway. So anyway, stay tuned for that. It's going to be coming in the coming weeks. I'm probably going to rescape it today, but the video won't go up for a while because I gotta make sure it's right before I upload it. But anyway, thank you so much for going along on this journey with me. Like I said, this was very therapeutic for me to just say, hey, here's what happened, and I'm embarrassed, but life goes on. We make mistakes and we move on. We keep enjoying this hobby because that's what it's all about. So anyway, I don't have anything else to say about it. The embarrassing time is over. I got to get all this stuff out of here so I can start over and not feel like such a failure. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.